Good evening, everybody out there in Facebook land. Welcome to this Facebook Live on intimacy as an act of courage. And tonight I'm going to dive into the three shades of intimacy, what they are, why they're so critical to relationships, what you can do to improve the intimacy in your relationship, and what gets in the way and stops intimacy in its tracks, and how this whole subject of intimacy has changed um, due to the internet, because the internet gives us all sorts of different visions of what intimacy is and what's possible and all that, but it doesn't really give us a lot of tools and training, because intimacy is an act of courage, and so it's hard to build that courageous muscle on the internet, even though here we are talking on the internet. So I'm going to go through some of the reasons, or some of the things that get in the way of us actually having intimacy. The number one thing is, and by the way, uh, my handwriting is not going to be super neat. And if you can read it, I need a thumbs up out there. But one of the biggest things that stops intimacy in its tracks is people are afraid of being vulnerable. And what it's going to take is a paradigm shift, a change in the way we look at vulnerability. Is vulnerability an act of courage, an act of strength, or is it a weakness? Growing up in my family, vulnerability was seen as weakness. And so if we see weakness as vulnerability, vulnerability as weakness, we're going to be afraid of being intimate, because intimate is the ultimate vulnerability. The second thing is people get really uncomfortable. It makes me really uncomfortable. And so I'm afraid of being intimate. And when I say the three shades of intimacy, what I'd love for you to do is type in what you think the three shades are. And yes, one of them is sexual intimacy, but there's two other types of intimacy I'm going to talk about today, and they are just as critical. So let's dive into that. So the other thing that gets in the way of having great intimacy is I really don't know what my partner wants, and they don't know what I want, and I don't know how to ask for what I want. And we're going to look at that and talk about that and how to open up the communication. And the thing is, why we started with vulnerability is communicating what you're feeling and needing and wanting and making requests is definitely a very vulnerable thing to do. So what happens to a relationship, and I have been coaching couples for over 25 years, maybe 30 years. What happens to a relationship when intimacy dies is the relationship dies. Intimacy is the lifeblood of relationships. And hi, Anaprava. Welcome to the call. If you get the link, you can bounce on and talk with me. I'd love to have your input here. All right. Now, here is some of the benefits of sticking with this call and sticking with intimacy. Is we both know when we get to the place, we both know that vulnerability is the key to the heart. And one of the things that makes relationships great is a heart-to-heart connection. It's not an intellectual connection. It's not a pain-body connection. It's heart-to-heart. And the second thing is when we feel really courageous and adventurous to get outside of our comfort zone, that creates a lot of space for intimacy. Intimacy doesn't happen inside our comfort zone. Now, there's a difference between safety and comfort. Safety creates a space for intimacy to happen. But no matter how safe it is, it tends to be uncomfortable to talk about what you want, what you need, be vulnerable in there. Fear of rejection. Yes, share when you share your feelings and needs. That's definitely. And by the way, I'm reading all the comments, so I interact with them. And some of the comments aren't showing up on this screen because this goes out to about, I don't know, 6 or 7 different places, and then it gets shared all across, I mean, probably 30 or 40 different places. So I will check as many of them as I can when this is over if I'm not seeing your comments right now, and I will get back to you. And you can personal message me if you've got a question or an issue you want me to make a comment on. All right. So the other thing that intimacy allows is for us to communicate openly and honestly about our dreams and desires and fantasies. It also allows us to talk about our fears and our doubts. And our fantasies, I'm not just talking about in our bedroom. It's in the bedroom, it's in the relationship. It's like I homework for you guys out there is to do a fantasy date. And a fantasy date is if you could have it all your way tonight, what would you want to do? You know, even with COVID and social distancing, and maybe you're locked in the house and you can't go out. Still, if you could have it all your way tonight, what would you like to do? And if tonight is too much, if you could have it all your way for the next 10 minutes, what would you do? Would it be a foot rub? Would it be watching TV together? Would it be a massage? Would it be making love? Would it be making love in a special way? What is it you would want? So the idea here is to open up the communication, because intimacy is not about comfort. It's about risk. It's about risking and talking about what's alive in us and hearing about what's alive in our partner. And hopefully what my idea here is, if we can continue to be intimate, our relationships get better and better. And if you're really good at it, there's a place where your partner will go, oh my God, please do that again. So, all right, I'm going to dive in to the 3 shades of intimacy. And by the way, I was once told if you don't know how to spell a word in several different ways, you're not being flexible. So you might see some flexible spelling tonight. So number 1, emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy is where we can actually talk about our feelings and needs. And if we're not met emotionally, then someone's not going to feel safe physically and intimately and sexually. So if someone can't open their heart to you, they're not going to open their body to you. The other part, which is, I've been studying this, it's so critical. All right, spelled that a little bit wrong, but it's the attachment theory. And what happens in the attachment theory is we have patterns that are either bonding and bringing us together, because that's what we all want as human beings. We want to bond, we want to connect, and much as we enjoy our autonomy, what makes us feel safe and secure and connected is having bonding patterns. And in a relationship, we have 2 types of pattern. 1 is bonding, and 2 is our painful patterns. And what happens in a long-term relationship is the painful patterns end up expanding and expanding, and the bonding patterns get smaller and smaller, and pretty soon it suffocates the relationship. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So emotional, then we have physical intimacy, and I'm separating physical and sexual out. The physical intimacy, what we want to do there is the different types of touches and connections and cuddles and making requests. Will you hold me? My partner is very good at being able to make requests and going, can you give me a hug? Can you come cuddle with me? Can you do this? And making physical requests for connection there. So it's so important to make requests. The challenge with making a request is, and it goes all the way back to the very beginning, anytime we make a request, we're vulnerable. And as Anaprabha said, there's a fear of rejection when you share your feelings and needs, and when you make a request. And there is just, down here, there is an incredible healing power of being held. And so it's being able to tell your partner, what is it you want and need? Can you hold me? Can you cuddle me? Can you give me a hug? One of my mentors, a woman who's an incredible woman, I interviewed her on this show, Alison Armstrong. She wrote The Queen's Code. And if you haven't read The Queen's Code, it's so worth reading. Doesn't matter whether you're a man, a woman, whatever, read The Queen's Code. But anyway, she talks a bit about launchings and landings when somebody's, and this is a little different with COVID because people aren't going to work the way they used to. But anytime somebody leaves, that's a launching and sending them out in the world. And it's good to give them a hug, to stop, to connect, to let them know that you love them. And landings are when they get back from the grand adventure out into the wilds here. And then the third one, which is what most people think of when they think of intimacy, they think of sexual intimacy. And I definitely want to talk about that along with the other ones. I made a video on YouTube about Tantra and sacred sexuality, and that's been seen like 5.8 million times. And I talk a bit about sexual intimacy. It's PG, but it's all about how do you connect from the heart? Because if you think about sex is a form of communication. What are you trying to communicate when you touch your partner? What are you trying to communicate when you make noise and you talk during sex? If that serves you, are you auditory? Because it's all a form of communication. You're communicating with your touch, your breath, your moans, how your body moves. Are you sitting there waiting for it to be over? Are you into it? And so one of the things that you can do this is my homework for you. If you are currently in any form of relationship, I'm giving you 10 minutes of intense homework. Decide who is going to give and who is going to receive. Whoops. And for 10 minutes, the receiver just asks for whatever they want. And the giver, as long as it's within your bounds, whatever your boundaries are, the receiver gives. And what's challenging is it's hard for us because of our culture to actually ask for what we want. And it's really a great exploration. Let's spend a few minutes getting clear what it is that we want and how we're going to get it. I'm looking and seeing what else I can talk about. There are 5 different modes down here. When I was up here at touches, I want to give you, there are 5 different touches. Oh, I already had touches there. So I'm going to give you the 5 touches, and then I'm going to talk to you like if you've ever studied, say, the 5 different love languages. a friend of mine, Jaya, came up with the 5 different sexual blueprints, I think she calls them. I'm calling them modes here, blueprints. But I'm going to tell you what, excuse me, what they are. First, I'm going to tell you the 5 touches. And you can practice this tonight. So get your pen out and write these down. They're going to make sense to you in a second. Air, water, earth, whoops, fire, and not sure how to spell it, but ether. So tonight on the couch, watching TV, reading Facebook, doing whatever it is that you want to do. If you're with somebody, and even if you're by yourself, you can practice this on your own arm. So air, light touch. You can blow just like that on their arm, their leg, their thigh, wherever it is. If you have hair, unlike me, you can use your hair over them. So the air touch is light, unpredictable. The water is more of a flowing, a deeper touch. Earth is more of a massage where you can like squeeze and almost get down to the bone. It's very grounding and it's slow. Fire, use your fingernails and your whole body kind of wakes up. It gives you goosebumps. And ether is a still hand. So like if you're just on their chest or wherever it is, you're just holding, and you can take your hand away and it still feels like your hand is there. You're just trying to send love and energy with these touches. So practice these 5 different touches when you're making physical connection, and give your partner feedback. I like that. Could you do it differently? Could you do it like this? Let them know through your breathing, through your tone of voice, whatever it is. And now down here on sexual intimacy, well, actually, I'm going to bounce over. So those of you who are there for sexual intimacy, that's going to come in a minute. This one here, I want you to gain some emotional IQ so that you actually start to learn to have a language of, I called it the language, of love. Is a language of feelings and needs, being able to talk about your feelings, being able to talk about your needs, making clear requests. A lot of times we have a hard time talking about our needs, especially the masculine energy has been taught not to have feelings, not to have needs. You know, I had one guy who was a client, because I work with clients and couples from all around the world over Zoom. And he said he would rather jump out of an airplane at night into enemy territory where people are trying to kill him. Then he would feel more comfortable doing that than talking about his feelings and his needs, his emotions. So this is something where you have to build. Let's see if I can draw the right picture here. You build your emotional muscle by practicing talking about feelings and needs with your partner. Is it scary? Absolutely. I teach this stuff, and there are still days where I get triggered and I retreat. And I retreated to my shell and I put up a wall, and I don't want to talk about any feelings and needs because it doesn't feel safe. So this is a muscle that needs to be developed on a regular basis. Hi, Danielle. How are you doing? So think about this. And by the way, the other part of it is a lot of times we think we're sharing emotions like anger. Anger, yeah, or here's what people say. I feel abandoned. I feel manipulated. I feel used. All of those are, and I'll change colors here. Those are what I call secondary emotions. They're emotions that have a judgment in there that are going to push away the person you're talking to. I feel judged. I feel used. I feel abused. In that is a story. So try to, especially if you're talking to someone that you love and care about, try to talk about it like, I feel hurt. I feel scared. I feel disappointed. Those are more of the primary emotions. And when you're communicating, I am definitely coming back to talking about sex and sexuality, but I just wanted to talk about this for a second. We communicate from 3 different places, especially when we're triggered. One of the places is collapse. This below the line, this basically is the drama line. It's how we were taught how to deal with conflict. So over here, we're combative. So collapsing, combative, and then up top, we get courageous. And that's where we're talking from the heart. That is the most challenging. It is also the most intimate place to come from, is right here, from the heart. It's the hardest because once we get triggered, it's tempting to drop below the line. When we drop below the line, we tend to either collapse, which I was just talking to my brother last week, and he was talking about what it was like growing up in our family. So my older brother, who's no longer with us, he actually committed suicide many years ago. He was a tormentor. I was the middle kid, and my older brother would torment me. And I didn't, even though I went through it, talking to my younger brother helped me understand the severity of it. Because even later in life, when trauma would happen, when trauma came up in a relationship, I noticed I had a tendency to collapse or get combative. But collapse was sort of the dominant one, and that's odd because I'm 6'3", 230 pounds. Why would I collapse? I could be easily combative. It was because I was conditioned as a child through stress, through trauma, through my older brother beating me up and doing all sorts of psychological stuff to make me collapse. And I know people have had it a lot worse than me. I'm just saying this so that people have more compassion for themselves and compassion for people that drop below the line. And what we want to do is we want to get people back above the line, because when you're collapsed and combative, there's no connection, there's no intimacy, there's no safety in the relationship. And if you want great intimacy, you need to feel safe. So one last thing on communication, and then definitely I'm going to bounce back up. We communicate from 3 different places. Now, I talked about collapse, combative, and courageous. This is a different 3 places. We communicate from our head, our heart, or our hurt. When we communicate from our head, it's all about facts. Give me the facts, give me the data, give me the information, who's right, who's wrong, I just want the facts. The problem is it's not very connecting. And the thing is, right here, vulnerability is weakness. I don't want to feel vulnerable. I want to have the answers. I want the answers. Like if your job is to have answers and to solve problems, not having the answers makes you weak. At home, it's a totally different world. So here, whoops, when we're communicating from our heart, what's most important? It's our feelings, needs, requests. It's all about connection. Up here, it's all about information. So when I start getting couples speaking to each other, it's like two different languages. There's a language of the head, which is facts, figures, who did what. It was 9 o'clock. I was engaged at one point to someone who had a photographic memory. It was impossible to have an argument with this person because she always went to the facts. And I didn't care what time it was. I cared that my feelings were hurt or that something, that I didn't feel cared for. So if someone's speaking in their head and someone's speaking in their heart, they're speaking in two different languages and from two different places. By the way, down here in the heart, vulnerability is key. It's the most important thing. And I'm going to move this down here. Whoops. And when we're speaking from hurt, what we're worried about is safety, protection, who's the ally, who's the enemy. This is critical. So if you want to have an intimate connection, there's some ways of getting from the hurt back to the heart, to leaning in. And one of the magical ways to get somebody out of their hurt and into their heart is to ask a simple question. Doesn't always work, but it is one of the most effective questions I have ever learned in this area. It's like, honey, what do you need to feel safe right now? A lot of times what we do is we push them further into their hurt by telling them that they shouldn't feel the way they feel. They shouldn't be, in reaction. They should be happy. They should, all of these things. The more that we tell somebody they shouldn't feel what they feel or that they're wrong for feeling it, the more that they put up a wall between you and them, and the more that you end up looking like the enemy and you stop being the ally. If you want connection, you need to be the ally and help them feel safe again, because being in your heart, to be in your heart, you need to feel safe. When you're down here, excuse me, change that color. When you're down here, again, vulnerability is the enemy. When people are in their hurt, they don't want to feel vulnerable. They already feel vulnerable enough. They're terrified. They're scared. Whatever it is, that's what they're feeling. So the whole idea here is, how do we create this connection? Because this is where intimacy happens. Intimacy doesn't happen up here, and it doesn't happen down here. Hopefully this is making sense. What I'd love for somebody to do, or several people to do, is type in what they're getting from this. So it's how we communicate is going to create either a safe opening, or it's going to stop open and honest communication in its tracks and block any chance of intimacy. when you're communicating, if you're trying to get to the facts and figures, you're communicating from your head. If you're listening for the facts and figures, you're listening from your head. So you're either speaking from your head or listening from it. If you want to come from your heart, you're trying to listen for how are they feeling? What are they needing? What's their request? That hopefully all this makes sense. I know I'm giving you a lot of information at one time. I've been doing this for 25, almost 30 years, I think. And I wrote a book on it. The book is called Argue Less, Love More. It's a bestseller. It was a bestseller in 5 different categories. I was looking at that today. Marriage, family and counseling, couples, healthy relationships, and dysfunctional relationships. I didn't even know there was a category for dysfunctional relationships, but my book was #1 in that category to help people get over dysfunctional relationships. And you can get it on Amazon for $19.97 plus shipping. It is worth it. Or you can get it on my website for free. And I'm going to add a friend of mine here that my book was #1 in that category. We're got an echo.
I know, so I had to turn you off. I've been listening.
Thank you so much.
Writing.
So Anna Prava, who is a friend and a fellow coach, and I'm going to bring up sort of the map. And what I want to do is I want to get your feedback on what I just covered here and what resonated with you.
Well, what resonated really strongly was how we communicating from the heart, from the head, heart, and hurt. And what I experience, with my beloved is that he'll go into the head and I will want to be in the heart. And then my shame around needs, right? Just the need shame will come up. And so I'll kind of feel like, okay, I'll handle this head talk for a while, right? Okay, I can do this back and forth. And then I find myself, just having a harder time bringing him back into the heart, And
let me just touch on one thing you just said there. I'm going to put a note there. Why especially do men go to their head? Because it feels safe.
Exactly.
And talking about emotions is scary shit. It's especially as the masculine, we're not taught to talk about our emotions. We're shamed. There is a ton of shame around that. So say more.
Yeah, it's a really vulnerable place also, for me, coming out of this, working with Love Coach Academy, being a coach, really working with feelings, really getting in touch with feelings and needs. And also it's still really something I really need to stay present with and feeling worthy that I can have needs, feeling, and the safety is so important, that safety, is it safe to share my feelings? Is it safe to put out what I'm needing? And often my experience has been when I do, my beloved will go, oh, sure, sure, and it brings him back into his heart, into that connected place. And we'll just take a breath, and tune in there. But it's like, it seems like it's kind of my job or my really, presence or my awareness. And it's my work actually for myself. That's my, it's like a blessing for me that also to have someone that, even though there is the headspace where he's kind of a very intellectual type of person, and I'm more of a heart space person, right? But however, it's really my work to really to share those feelings that I have and to share those needs that I have. And so I'm just seeing it as that's really a blessing, and it's an opportunity for me to really strengthen that muscle and work with it and really appreciate him in that way. Right.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing you say, and is there's a huge difference, and I want people to get this. There's a huge difference between comfort and safety.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how long I've done this, if I'm really being intimate, it's not comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I still feel a lot of fear. The fear comes up, and it's what I want. And the intimacy, I want the intimacy. I want the heart connection. How am I going to get out of this head space and bring it into the heart where we can connect deeply, right? And the fear comes up, really, and I really have to really overcome this fear, and the fear of, because we want this connection, and I have a fear that when I say what I'm feeling or what I'm needing, that I'll have disconnection.
Right.
Right. So the safety place is, just to go along with the conversation in the head, keeping it up here, back and forth, and not really feeling it, just like this headspace. And the depth, the connection that I want is really the head. I was really the heart, really heart space, right? It's safety. And so the uncomfortableness is to go through the fear I have of like saying what I'm feeling. And say, hey, well, I'm needing some more connection right now. I'm just really needing to, feel your heart, or I'm feeling afraid, I'm feeling scared, but I really want to share this with you. Can I get feedback?
Going like here, when I was talking about the 3 different places, we can be courageous, we can collapse, or we can get combative.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at what you're saying right now, it'd be good to give examples of the 3 different approaches for the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
A collapse is sort of like, oh, well, he doesn't love me. I might as, he's not going to give me what I want anyway. So why ask?
Right. And so then you just keep on the same conversation in the head space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just stay safe, just stay in the head, just keep this kind of intellectual conversation going. And so it's kind of collapsing because it's really deep, and I'm really wanting to really speak about something else. I'm wanting to speak from the heart.
Yeah. And then the combative side is, you loser, you don't love me. How come you didn't read my mind and give me what I wanted, even though I was too ashamed to ask for it?
Right. Exactly. Or also like going into why aren't you getting me? Why don't you don't care about me, right? You don't love me. And kind of like going from, instead of getting curious, right? Say, hey, what's going on for you right now? I would be, you can go more that combative sort of energy of, hey, what's going on? Don't you care? Obviously you don't love me. You don't care about me. You don't want to know what I'm feeling. And then just shut down. Instead of getting curious and really like tuning in, hey, what's going on for you? Because I'm really feeling like, really want to really connect. I really have a few things I want to share, and I'm not really feeling so comfortable right now with this conversation, or I'm feeling some fear is coming up, or some anxiety is coming up. I'm feeling really anxious right now because I'm wanting to share this, and I'm not feeling safe to share it.
Okay. And I hear Steve saying, I hear the word safe, but I don't understand what you mean. I was a street kid. Being safe meant nobody kicking my ass. Can't get what this means in a relationship. So do you want to try that? And then I'll answer that too. So first place, 1 second. Steve, thank you for even asking that, because I'm sure a lot of people. Okay, go on, Aprava.
Yeah, I love that, Steve. That's exactly right. That's why it really has taken me. I came out of a alcoholic, physically, emotionally abusive family. And so, and I really, Steve, I'm with you, because it took me a long time, because I felt safe. I was just happy to have a conversation. And I would stay safe by really not talking about my feelings, not talking about my emotions, not saying what I needed. just so that so that safety, I felt safe just by having a conversation. I felt that was safe. I've had to really learn, and Love Coach Academy, I've had to learn about feelings, what really tuning into what my feelings are. What am I feeling right now? Because otherwise, if we're not getting yelled at or hit, we feel like we're safe, right? That's okay. I'm not being yelled at. This person seems to like me. Okay, good. We keep going from there. But the deeper aspect of really tuning into your body somatically, what is happening inside right now? And if I'm with this person, having the courage, I guess, to share, well, I'm feeling scared right now.
Yeah. So thank you. And I think one of the things that came up for me, like I grew up in a somewhat alcoholic, violent environment. And so safety, well, the lack of safety in my environment, there's physical safety, which was not always available, and there was emotional safety. And emotional safety is more of what I think we're talking about in this conversation. And emotional safety, the lack of it is when you say something, it is used against you. I'm feeling scared. Well, let me tell you the 6th reason you shouldn't feel scared. What's wrong with you? You should just be more courageous, So it's like emotional safety is when you can say something and someone will lean in, as Anaprabha, you said, like they become curious. They go, tell me more. It's like there's a space for you to feel what you're feeling versus a lot of times what would happen, you'd have to defend how you're feeling.
It was not safe to say what you're feeling. Feelings, sharing what you felt meant sudden death because you're letting a person it's just artillery to use against you, basically. In my family growing up.
Exactly. That's the same thing. My dad was great at that. And so before I dive into the 5 different modalities around sex and sexuality, the 5 different blueprints that Jaya told me about, is there anything, Anaprabha, I brought up emotional, physical, and sexual intimacy. Anything else you wanted to say about like emotional intimacy, which is what we just were talking about?
I just feel that the emotional intimacy is so important. I think that's the primary one that's the primary one in relationships. And oftentimes what happens, especially coming out of unsafe families, unsafe situations, you'll go right to the physical intimacy, the sexual intimacy. That's just that can be just an easy go-to, right? Both getting sort of physical needs met, and that's totally bypassing really the emotional intimacy of what the heart is really needing to feel safe, right? The heart is really needing to feel loved. The heart is really needing to feel that somebody cares about you and cares about you in how you feel. Are you hungry? Are you cold? Are you tired? Just these things that we might bypass because we don't feel important enough or valuable enough.
Yeah, that's critical. And sometimes people use sex to avoid intimacy.
Exactly.
Intimacy is about risk. It's about if I'm really revealing what's alive in me, my fears and doubts, my dreams and desires, I don't know what your reaction is going to be. That's that courageous place that creates the edge of intimacy. And Steve says, thank you, guys. You're so welcome. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that it's his question. Part of the reason I loved it is because I'm sure for so many men and for women, that's a common question. Like I left home at 17 and became a commercial fisherman in Alaska because I wanted to be rough and tumble. I wanted to prove that I was tough. I had to prove it to myself.
Yeah, and exactly. And really growing up in those environments, it's about survival. It's
Yes.
just surviving, right? We like just how am I going to survive this and get out of this? And then there is this need, it seems, to really go put ourselves in these really intense situations to see if we survive them, right?
Absolutely. And I'm going to put something at the bottom just for people who want to get a free copy of my book. They can go to arguelesslovemore.net/free book. And Anaprava, I'm going to dive in. Do you know who Jaya is? Have you heard of her work at all?
Not recently. Not, not
All
maybe
right.
I could meet her, see her face.
So here we go. Are you familiar with the 5 love languages?
Yes.
So the way I describe the 5 love languages are time, talk, touch, gifts, and acts of service. And the important thing why I bring this up is if you're talking and you're not speaking their love language, like they want words of affirmation and you're buying them gifts, it's like they go, don't buy me something. Tell me you love me.
Yeah.
And then if gifts are it, they go, don't tell me you love me, you cheap bastard. Buy me something. So it's knowing their love language. So in the bedroom, there are 5 love languages, and I'm going to share them. And this is generalization to help people know what your love language is or your sexual blueprint. And so, Anaprava, the first one, you can see which ones you relate to here, is energetic. So energetics, like you could be across the room and it's sort of like, whoa, I feel the energy. Wow. It's like you get all turned on just by being anywhere near this person. It's this movement of energy. So energetics are number 1. And if you want to jump in and add anything anywhere.
Well, I'm an energetic being. I'm a sound therapist, so I'm all around energy and frequency and tuning into vibrational. So that is I do feel an energy of the person.
Cool.
So I do work with energy, and I do see where I vibe with that person. Yeah.
So number two is sensuals. And sensuals are the ones that deal with I want to make sure I got out there, the 5 senses. So like smell, you want to have incense or flowers, take a bath, you want to have clean sheets, you music in the room, it's visually appealing, the room is clean, it's it looks like a beautiful place was set up, there was a lot of thought, and it's all about the 5 senses. And setting it up.
I'm a Libran, right? So Libras and Venusian. I'm very Venusian Libra. So we really need beauty.
Yeah.
Not that everything has to be in exactly the perfect place, but a certain ambience, a certain music, a nice candle, music, huge. Since I'm a musician, I definitely.
And by the way, there is one. I just changed this to arguelesslovemore.net clarity for those people who want to have a 15-minute session and find out what's going on in their relationship and have a breakthrough. I'm just putting that in there. They can do that. And I'll find out from Anaprava how they can get a hold of you. All right. Okay. So I kind of pulled this out of this for a second. Number 1 was energetic. Number 2 was the sensual with the 5 senses, and you were just describing it. Number 3 is the sexual. And the sensual and the energetic are almost all about foreplay and getting ready, and the environment's got to be right. And if the music is the wrong music, it could totally take out of the mood, or the room smells bad. Like any of these things screws with the senses, game over. The sexual is forget foreplay. Let's make love. Let's be intimate. Let's have intercourse, whatever you want to say. Like we're wasting time here. Let's go. Now, that can be a great turn on or it can be a great turn off, especially to someone who's an energetic. It's like the best way to sort of describe that is if you have a hangover and somebody comes in that next morning when you're just barely climbing out of the bed and go, hey, get out of bed, we're going to have a great day. It's like, go the away.
Right.
So it's important to know whether they're an energetic, they're a sensual, they're a sexual, or the fourth one. Any wild ideas about what the fourth one might be? The kinky.
Oh,
The kinky, there's no like narrow box we can put around the kinky. It's whatever taboo that turns you on. It can be tied to the bed, spanked, whatever. Like there's a huge variety in there. And so it's important to know what yours is. And it's sort of like a buffet. You might think you know what yours is only because you haven't tasted the other ones. So it's good to try them all at least once or twice and see which one floats your boat. And number 5 is a shapeshifter. And a shapeshifter can move through all of these different ones. They can be energetic, they can be sensuous, they can be sexual, they can be kinky. They want to experience all these different ways.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, Paul. To be willing to try all the different ways, and a lot is all around too energetics. I think like tuning in, like deep listening, or maybe that's just me.
You went right back to the energetics.
It's all energetics, right? Because it's all like tuning into the other, right? And the deeper we can drop in, and of course know ourselves, but also being willing to let that other in and tuning into the other, and also sharing. This is where the vulnerability comes in around sharing, and the communication comes in, and the willingness to be more intimate in our feelings and needs, and creating trust. The more trust there is in the relationship, the more availability I think each person is, especially the Venusian. I'll just speak for me, for the Venusian, the female. I think the more trust, the availability, the more willingness the person is, the partner, for the vulnerability, then the more trust is there, the more the Venusian is able to open up and receive.
And the more it takes courage. And if something is uncomfortable for you, it's tempting to go, that's bad, stupid, wrong. That's disgusting. That's awful. That's whatever it is. Rather than go, I'm scared and uncomfortable. I need to try it like in a little dose or put some boundaries up, or, so it's set yourself up and your partner to win. So it's time that I've got to bounce off. I've got another call to get on. And I appreciate everybody coming and learning stuff. And thank you so much, Anaprava, for diving on here. We went through really the 3 shades of intimacy: emotional, physical, sexual intimacy. And one of the keys is being curious and how to communicate. You could be collapse, combative, or courageous. And the thing is, when you're down in collapse and combative, that's the trauma drama line. And communicating from the head, the heart, or the hurt. And when you're in your hurt, that again, the trauma drama line. So anything, you get to have the closing statement, Anaprava.
Thank you, Paul. Well, I so appreciate, actually I had wanted to jump in with this earlier in the day, and I just got so busy. So thank you for inviting me in. And I think when just the aspect about falling into the hurt, what can happen in the hurt is the shock that can happen. Like I can experience a shock to being hurt. Something is said, and the person maybe didn't even mean it in any hurtful way, but it triggers my shame, triggers a hurt, and I will then want to disappear, or it takes me a while. I won't even know it takes me time to process it and to share it. So I would just like to invite everyone to really be gentle with themselves. Just like, we're all just works in progress here. We're all doing the best we can. And I really, just tuning into your body and how you're feeling, right? And just slowing down, tuning into your body, what you're feeling, and just like getting curious about yourself and what you're feeling and what you're needing. And then finding really a safe, you're a safe person to share it with, and just experiment with it and get curious with each other. So thank you very much for inviting me today, Paul. Thanks.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you, Anna Prabha.